Well, many thanks, Thomas and Bill and Nick and others who helped with the sound system troubleshooting. This was a surprise. We did not expect to find this morning. But isn't it wonderful when there's one troublesome speaker, you can just disconnect it. This doesn't work when we have a troublesome neighbor. And that's some of what we're getting at as we take in the Ten Commandments. Last week, if you were in worship, you heard the first table of the Ten Commandments, the set of commandments that have to do with our love for God. Today, we begin the second table that has to do with our love for our neighbor. Let's continue to hear God's word in the book of Exodus, chapter 20, beginning at the 12th verse. God said to the gathered people of Israel, "Honor your father and mother, so that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I grew up in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. If you live there too, sing along. Choir, will you back me up? It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for a beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? Mr. Rogers' neighborhood was a wonderful place to grow up. There were special guests like Yo-Yo Ma and Julia Child and the percussion ensemble Stomp. Mr. Rogers had fun little puppets, Daniel Tiger and King Friday. You felt like you mattered in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, and the guy was so chill. It felt like no matter what happened, everything would be okay. You might know that Mr. Rogers was a Presbyterian minister, probably the most famous Presbyterian minister in the world. To my knowledge, he never said the name Jesus on his show. But in the community that he was creating, he was doing a very, very Jesus-like thing, because he was creating a community of neighbors. Jesus was simply the freest human being ever to live. He called his followers to share in his freedom, and at the heart of that freedom was unqualified, dignifying love for the neighbor. It's the sort of love Jesus learned by taking in the Ten Commandments, most of which have to do with the life we live with others. So I was still very new to the neighborhood of my previous congregation, Christ Presbyterian Church in Chesterland, up in Geauga County outside of Cleveland. It was a Monday morning, February 27th, 2012, to be exact. It was the day after my installation as their pastor. My dad had come into town. My dad was a runner. I, at the time, was a runner. We went onto one of the lovely county park trails and went for a trail run the next morning. We got back to my car, and I checked my phone, and there were multiple missed calls, something like 10 messages. I looked at the messages, and my heart became a jackhammer. There had been a shooting at Chardon High School, the high school where 5 of our youth were students. That evening, people from across the community gathered at our church to be held by God and to hold one another in a prayer service. 6 students had been shot. 3 died. All of us were wounded. The next Sunday, I gathered with some of the students in my office to talk and pray before worship. There in my office on a bookshelf, there was a little Moses doll, a figurine that could say the Ten Commandments if you pushed a little button on his back. One of the students pointed it out and said, "Oh, this is really cool. Watch this." And I pressed the button, and in his baritone voice, Moses said, "You shall not murder." We just looked at each other, stunned. Someone gave a nervous laugh. I said, "Amen, Moses," to a command that no longer felt far away, like it was carved on ancient tablets of stone. This command felt more inscribed on our hearts. All of us who had spent a week looking at people totally differently, just feeling the preciousness of each other, wondering if that teacher that you can't stand, if that teacher in fact would go and run and try to tackle an intruder. Wondering if that loner at school needs more kindness. Seeing each other as a community where everyone needs to be dignified by love. Last week, we listened to the first table of the Ten Commandments that trains our hearts in love for God. This week, we're listening to the second table that turns our hearts in love toward our neighbor. In giving the Ten Commandments, God is creating a new kind of community. Yes, a community where God is loved, but a community in which love of neighbor has central place. God's doing this as the Israelites are on a journey out of slavery in Egypt. And so, when they receive the commandments, on paper, they are free. But in the flesh of their lives, they're facing an important question. How now will we live together? Because they had escaped the Pharaoh who valued them not as people of inherent dignity of worth, but just as people who could do stuff for Pharaoh, who could be pawns in Pharaoh's production economy. But now they faced another danger. Would they now squander the freedom they had received by creating a Pharaoh-like culture of their own? God had gotten the people out of slavery, but it was a much longer process to get the slavery out of the people. They had to learn what Pharaoh's example didn't teach them: how to turn toward each other, how to honor each other, how to seek their neighbor's best life in a freedom that wasn't going to be about what I can now do, what my rights are, but a freedom that's about the significance of the neighbor and seeking the neighbor's good. Now that God was the people's master, the good of people had to take central place. So God said, honor your father and mother, so that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. Because the fact of the matter is that you are dependent on other people for guidance and care, both in your family and elsewhere, and so use your freedom to obey those who lead you well. And when age weakens them, give them care. God said, you shall not murder, because your neighbor's life is precious, God-given. It's not something for you just to do with as you wish. So use your freedom to guard and to better your neighbor's life. God said, you shall not commit adultery, because unfaithfulness to a spouse is another kind of slavery. It's enslavement to our desires curved in on ourselves. You've been set free by a loving and faithful God, the command says. So mirror that love and faithfulness to your spouse. And God said, you shall not steal, because life, after all, doesn't rest on what you can get for yourself. Life is a gift from a God who is generous. So channel God's generosity by giving to your neighbor. And God said, "You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, because your neighbor is precious and can be harmed by words as much as by fists. So use words that are loving and true and that build up your neighbor." The God who gives these commandments is the God we see in Jesus. So we need to hear the commands as flowing from the love and the justice and the grace that we see in Jesus. The commandments are building a community based not on freedom for self, but on freedom for others. The life they would produce in us isn't my best life now, it's my neighbor's best life now. And so the second table of the Ten Commandments is very good news. It's good news for the people all around us. Although these days, maybe some people need some convincing that their neighbor could be good news to them. Because back in March, the Pew Research Center published the results of a 25-nation survey in which they asked people to rate the morality and ethics of other people in their country. Of the 25 nations, Americans finished last. More than any other nation, Americans were more likely to question the morality of their neighbor. Well, if the commandments were being given to people being set free, how much more do we need people and communities who are using their freedom to seek the good of others? And of course, there are such people. Tim Shriver is one of them. Tim Shriver is the chairperson of Special Olympics International. And he's also, along with Tammy Pfeiffer and Tom Rothschild, the co-creator of what's called the Dignity Index. Tim, Tom, and Tammy look out at the world and they see the same world that we do. They're all Americans. They see a world of politics and algorithms and how the mix of that and just the sin that infects us all can lure us into treating one another with a kind of dehumanizing contempt. The Dignity Index is meant to help us think about our relationships with others. What kind of postures of heart and attitude are we bringing to relationships with neighbors, and maybe particular neighbors? What kind of desires of heart do we actually want to cultivate? What of our attitudes toward our neighbors needs to be redeemed? If you look on the back inside page of your bulletin, you see the Dignity Index summarized, if you want to check that out. If you look at it, the lower half registers attitudes of contempt for others. So a 1 all the way at the bottom is, they're not even human. It's our moral duty to destroy them before they destroy us. But there are gradations on the index because by the grace of God, it's possible for a person to grow in the freedom of love. So midway up the scale, there's 5. The other side has a right to be here and a right to be heard. They belong here too. 6 is, we always talk to the other side, searching for the values and interests we share. All the way up to 8. Each one of us is born with inherent worth, so we treat everyone with dignity no matter what. What do you think? Where does Jesus fall on this scale? I'm pretty sure Jesus is a solid 8. Jesus dignified people as an expression of true freedom. Jesus is the fulfillment of the Ten Commandments, and by God's grace, we are his followers. We aim to be with him, to become like him, and to do as he did. Jesus inaugurated a day when God's love will be all in all, and selfless, other dignifying love is going to be the only thing human beings can show to each other. That is where the world is headed in Jesus, by his living, dying, being raised for us. The whole creation is wrapped up in the movement that is going to that place. But folks, it doesn't take much looking to see that we are not there yet. Still, we follow the one whose ministry is taking the world to that day, the one whose ministry shows us what that good, other-loving, other-dignifying day is going to be like. And so even though life with others can get pretty stormy, even though it can be hard and we need a whole lot of grace from God, for children of God being free to love, it is always a beautiful day for a neighbor. Thanks be to God.